How to get into comics. Step 1. Pick up a book.
What? That's kind of it. That's all I gotta do. Why are you still here? That's the video. Cut. What, you want a whole 10 minutes explanation of—
I know maybe that comes off a little facetious, but comics really are that easy to get into. I can't explain it any simpler than that. All you have to do for pretty much any media is pick it up and start. It might sound confusing at first, it might not be as easily relatable. You also might start with something bad. That could happen with anything. You know, many people I know that listen to jazz and there's kind of like, it's just a bunch of noise. I don't get it. There's no organization. Then they find that one song that just like clicks with their heart, and all of a sudden you're a jazz fan. That's comics, that's movies, that's any type of media. It's all just that simple. To put it simply, it's as complicated as you want it to be. It could be very simple if you want it to be. Now that's not to say that there are things in comics that are confusing, that can be a little divisive, that can be maybe tricky for some people to get past. But the key is to learn how to get past those things, and they are smaller than you think they are. So without further ado, I'm Evan Von Doom, and this is... I don't know, I'm new to this. I don't know how I'm gonna do the title drops yet. It could drop like from the ceiling, or it could slide in, or it could pop. As I was saying before, comics have this reputation of being hard to get into. It's something I never agreed with, and I think it comes from a place of either ignorance or maliciousness. Now, there is also probably some third mysterious factor I'm missing here, so just know that if you think they're hard to get into, I'm not saying you're a bad person or anything, but I do know there are some problem players in the communities that are trying to make it hard for some reason. There's a mixture of people in the comics community that are gatekeepers who don't want other people to get in for some reason. And there's also people who don't read or like comics who just feel like they have the authority to talk on it anyway. And they want to make it hard for you to get into. They want to make it seem like it's cringy for some reason, that it's not cool to get into, or that they have some moral or higher high ground, or some horse to sit on, so that they make it seem like comics are lesser than them. And by proxy, if you like comics, therefore, and ergo, and their whatnot, and it is 10 p.m. And therefore, if you like comics, you're kind of a nerd or a loser. This also stems and connects somehow to a bigger debate about manga versus comics. That's also a debate I'm not going to get into here. Personally, I love manga and I love comics. I do prefer comics over manga, but that's because I've been reading comics for a longer period of time. But there's no reason to pit the two against each other, in my opinion. They're very closely related, and they have clear influence over each other. While manga's been around for centuries, modern manga as we know it really started in the 1940s, when American comics began to get circulated overseas. I'm not a historian, and I'm not here to have a big debate about this, but I think it would be a bit insulting to pretend Japan doesn't look at all out their window. The recent Miles Morales Spider-Man comic has a lot of manga influence in it. You can see in the kinetic energy. You can also see that in artists like Daniel Warren Johnson or Nikola Sizmezja. I am so sorry that I mispronounced your name. I'm confident that you know that I can't do it, but I want to. I'm trying my best. I am so sorry. I'm an American. We're dumb. But I will say manga and comics are different, and that's what makes them unique and beautiful. People like to say a lot is like comparing apples and oranges. Sure, why not? Both are fruit. Both can be good to other people. I don't know if the metaphor really works perfectly, because you can't really... I mean, maybe with gene splicing nowadays, you can like mix them a lot more. But I don't know. I've never had an apple orange. I cannot emphasize enough that it is 10 p.m. here. All this to say is there's no reason to compare manga and comics. They have their own ground to stand on. They're sisters in a lot of ways, and they really grow together, and they only grow stronger through competition that's friendly. But that's not what this is about. This is about getting specifically into comics. Maybe it's better if I start over and just do a step-by-step of how to get into comics. Title drop? Okay, so we're still working on that, but the title should be dropping about. One of the big criticisms I see for comics, and that it's difficult to get into them, is that there's so many places to start. Oh, you can start at Batman #1 from 1960. You can start at Batman #1 from the 70s. You can start at Batman #1 from the 80s or the 90s or 2000s or 2012 or 2015 or tomorrow or yesterday. Yeah, that does sound confusing, but here's the thing. you have a bunch of number ones to start at. Yeah, sure, with manga, you could start at chapter 1 for One Piece and read all 1,072 chapters. But the nice thing about comics is that, at least for the big two, which is Marvel and DC, you can pretty much just hop in whenever you want. Most comics are structured so that you can hop in and get all the information you need and just go with it. Comics don't want to be confusing. They want you to see this vast world and feel like you're hopping into it, and that can feel overwhelming, but it doesn't have to. Adults have a harder time than children at allowing things to happen and learning as they go. The example I like to give is my own personal one. I got to comics when I was about 10 or 12, and my dad just handed me 3 comics during Christmas and said, go nuts. The 3 comics were Spider-Man and 2 Fantastic Four comics, and there are these things called Marvel Age, which collected a bunch of just kind of random stories. There's like 1-parters, 2-parters, 3-parters, but for the most part, they were just like, oh, here's how you get to know the characters. And here's the thing, none of these comics gave me an origin. I didn't know how the Fantastic Four became Fantastic Four until like my 3rd Fantastic Four book. But up until then, I was just like, oh, these 4 people have superpowers, and they're running around doing adventures. Awesome. I didn't even get to Dr. Doom, my namesake, for like a year or 2 into reading Fantastic Four. And that's kind of what I mean when I say that adults have this problem that children don't have. I feel like children are a lot more willing to just jump into something and be like, whoa, I'm having an adventure now, and listen to what's being told to them versus searching for further information. There's this famous Grant Morrison quote that I'm going to paraphrase here, but adults are too concerned about how the Batmobile's tires are filled when we're watching the Batmobile crash through buildings. That's like, the plot's there, not with the how per se. There is a suspension of disbelief though that can happen for a lot of people, and I understand that. I am just simply saying we could let a few things go. We don't need the full story now and presently. We could pick up the pieces as we go. And that kind of goes back into what I'm saying about comics and how to get into them. The first thing you need to know about getting into comics is where to find comics. There's a lot of places to go to, there's a lot of resources online, but here's the basic breakdown of pretty simple places to go. The first place is going to be your local comic shop. I recommend this one first because while there is a cost of entry, it could be kind of as low as you need it to be or as high as you want it to be. And at the same time, you're getting people in there who are part of the community, who want you to be a part of the community because, I mean, they're selling comics. They're the business. If the comic industry fails, they don't have a job anymore. So of course they want more people to get into comics. So you can expect people to give you recommendations. That doesn't mean that they're going to give you the best ones, but it does mean that you have people who are excited for you to be there. And I think that sense of community can help you a lot and really get you an idea of the kind of scope that you're going to get yourself into. And it also means that you have people who are going in being like, hey, I see people come in every day. Here's the ones they get. Here's what I recommend. And here's what it sounds like you're looking for based on what you're describing to me. The next place I'm going to recommend is your local library. A lot of libraries now have a graphic novel center. A lot of libraries now have a graphic novel section. A lot of libraries now have a graphic novel section, and there's probably a lot of options there. That's where I went to when I was in high school a lot. I was very grateful in my town to have not only libraries available to me, but multiple options to go to. I should preface right now that I'm coming from a very American perspective here, and a very American city perspective where I have access to a local comic shop, I have access to the internet, I have access to libraries and public transport. This is not something that everyone has. I know like a lot of places in South America, for example, are just locked out of these options. And on top of that, most libraries will allow you to request books. So if you don't see a graphic novel that you're looking for or are interested in, then you could probably just like ask somebody for it. Again, funding for libraries is going down because we live in a shithole country. However, I don't know, give it a try. On top of that, in more and more recent years, there's a lot of digital accessible ways to get into comics. You have DC Infinite, you have Marvel Unlimited, you have Comixology, and a few other places that I'm going to list here instead of saying out loud because I don't use them. Awesome. And those are going to range in both price and what you get from them. Some of them are free services that work with your library, for example, like Hoopla or Libby. And those give you access to digital books that you can read, but they're going to be more limited than going to your actual library and requesting something or going to somewhere where you pay for the book separately. I like to use Comixology a lot because I like the amount of options they have, and also I'm kind of stuck in it. I don't really regret it. I mean, it's a good price and I get a lot of options and I read a lot of indie comics, so it's helpful for me. But if I can recommend you anything, I think the DC Infinite Ultra is very good. It gets you comics a month after they come out, so you'll be reading pretty recent comics compared to other apps. And for a price of basically like $10 to $12 a month, which is, if you read as many comics as I do per se, it's a very good deal, because I was reading about 5 DC comics a month before DC Infinite Ultra, and now I'm basically paying for maybe 3 or 4 comics and getting a whole back spew? That can't be a word. And it gives me a whole backlog of comics I can go back and look at that, are from the past, like Batman Year 1, or Batman Year 2, or Batman Year 3, or Batman Year 1000, or Batman. A lot of Batman. And those are like the main places you can go to for comics, but there is one more place that I feel uncomfortable saying here. As I was saying before, as an American, I have the privilege to have all these different accessible means to acquiring comics in a legal fashion, but a lot of places don't have that. DC Infinite and Marvel Unlimited are still unavailable in a lot of places in the world, and on top of that, a lot of places don't have libraries. A lot of places don't have access to the same digital databases or backlogs, and a lot of places don't even have local comic shops. So while comics are becoming more accessible, there's still a lot of work to be done. So there are other means of getting comics. Step 2. Next, you gotta know what you're into. A lot of people are gonna go into comics with, oh, I'm here for a superhero story, but comics are kind of more than that. Yes, the most popular ones are Marvel and DC as the big publishers, but there are a lot of publishers that do a wide variety of stories. So yeah, Marvel and DC really primarily focus on superhero stories, but then you have Image that mixes both superhero stories as well as slice of life, as horror, and other stuff. Then you have IDW, Titan, Boom, TKO, Dark Horse, a bunch of other publishers that are available for you to check out. And they all have different stories to tell. Another thing that holds a lot of people back from getting into comics is that they think it's all Marvel and DC. And so they watch a Marvel or DC project and they're like, this isn't for me, I don't like superheroes. Yeah, you don't have to. You don't have to go to Marvel and DC. There's other places to go to. You want a story about 2 guys falling in love over fencing? That exists. You want to see a demon punch other demons in the face and defy his fate as the Prince of Hell? That exists too. Or maybe you do want to see superhero stories, but you don't want the traditional ones. Maybe you want to see superhero stories stuck in like a murder mystery. Or maybe you want a high fantasy sci-fi adventure. There's a lot of options out there and they're all exploring different avenues. Don't limit yourself to just Spider-Man. Though I love Spider-Man. I love Spider-Man, I love Batman, I love blah blah blah. But don't limit yourself to that. You could be watching an anthropomorphic rabbit samurai trek across as a Ronin in feudal Japan. That exists. And it's the best comic of all time. And you've never heard of it. Go read Usagi Yojimbo. So I suggest going in with your heart and mind open. Be willing to explore. There's a lot out there and a lot of creators willing to put up new ideas for your entertainment. And for money.
We all love money.
Step 3. Forgive yourself. Forgive yourself. It's okay. It's okay. A lot of people get really worked up or caught off guard by the scope of superhero stories, as I was mentioning before, but that could be circumvented by lowering your expectations a little bit. I think a lot of people go into, specifically for Marvel and DC books, they go in thinking, oh, I need to know everything. I want to know everything. How do I know everything? Pause. You don't need to know everything, and that's okay. Don't get frustrated. Don't get upset. Comics are to have fun. It's not about knowledge dumping, it's not about knowing more than the next guy, it's about exploring what you want to explore. Let's take, for example, you go into a comic event like Secret Wars. So you go into Secret Wars, there's a lot of these multiverse shenanigans going on. There's like a wall made out of Ben Grimm, the Thing. You got these Marvel zombies teaming up with the Age of Ultron androids. What the hell is going on? There's a lot going on that I'm hearing about in the background of the story, but that's not the main focus. Do I have to know what's going on in those stories? Usually not. Yeah, sometimes they do come in and they play a role into the story. And if you're interested in that, you can always go and read those spin-offs of the event, but they're not necessarily needed. Most stories give you all the information that you need to know. Everything else is just additional information or encouragement for you to read other stories and explore what you're interested in. If you don't care about zombie stories, you don't have to read Marvel Zombies to get all the Secret Wars story. You can read Secret Wars in one sitting and get the full scale of the story, and then go explore what you want to explore afterwards. Or while you're reading it, just take a break and go explore that. And that goes for pretty much any comic that you're reading. I know a lot of people will read Spider-Man and be like, they're mentioning this event, or it ties into this event, blah, blah, blah. And there's a lot of ways to not have to deal with that. One, you could take a break from a book. If you're reading a comic ongoing each month, you could skip 2 months and read something else for a while, or go back and read books that you missed, or you could just try it out and maybe you'll actually like the event. And a lot of people are tired of events or don't like events. but you don't have to deal with them. You could just skip them. I know that's maybe blasphemy and a lot of people don't want to hear that. And again, I don't think we should have to deal with that. I don't think every book should have to tie into an event, but it helps sales. Like, that's why they do it. Like, they're not doing it because it doesn't work. It does unfortunately work, so they're going to keep doing it. And again, I just think that people need to be a little bit more patient because of that. This is not something that reflects on the creators per se. It's an industry standard, and that's the problem, the industry. You're dealing with Marvel and DC. You're kind of getting into this ongoing loop of we have to keep pumping out these stories. Try your hand at a different publisher. Try your hand at smaller stories and more contained stories. And forgive yourself for not knowing everything. No one expects you to know everything about a comic when you go into it. That's why you're reading comics, to have fun, not to know everything. Like, I won't pretend to know everything about everything. I will admit every time I make a mistake. There's a lot of people who won't do that, who will just double down, or who will go to Wikipedia. I don't know, is that interesting to you guys? If you think it's fun to read Wikipedia information, go crazy. I had a Marvel encyclopedia growing up because there were stories I was like, oh, I'm really interested in this, but I know I don't have the time or full interest, but I just want to get the quick glimpse of what's going on so I could continue with this story and fully get it. It wasn't necessary for the story, but it was something that I wanted to do to enhance my experience. And so encyclopedias helped me with that. But I never got the appeal of just being like, oh, I know this happened now. And then going on the internet being, actually, this happened in the comic. Actually, Dr. Doom was Tony Stark at one point. Actually, who cares? You know, it doesn't. It's just for internet points. It's not the real life. Like, some people make money off of it, so it is the kind of like a part of their real life. But most of us, it's just for pride and ego. Guys, let it go. Just read the comic. Yeesh. Not really the direction I wanted to go into. At the end of the day, comics are as hard as you want them to be to get into. If you are just uninterested in comics, that's also totally okay. No one's trying to force you to read comics, but a lot of people just love this community. They love the stories they're reading, they love the people they interact with or they meet online through this community or in person in this community, and they want to share that love with you. I want to share that love with you. I love comics, and I think everyone could find a comic that they like or love that really connects with them. One of the most surprising experiences in comics for me was reading The Unbelievable Gwenpool. I went in just looking for a fun, quick read where I could just be like, okay, I'm hopping in, gonna have a good time, and just go with the flow. By the end of the story, I was crying. It's this beautiful story that's a meta-narrative about the comic industry and the direction it's going and what characters mean to not only us but the world they live in. And at the same time, it's about finding your place in the world and discovering who you want to be. I thought that was beautiful, and it's exactly what I needed at the time. And that's the other thing about comics, that they're going to find you when you need them most. You'll be surprised that comics will sometimes not connect with you at all, and then 10 years later you're a different person, and suddenly that comic hits home. And you're crying and sobbing on your bedroom floor alone, and you feel like a nerd, but it's also very cathartic. And just know that if you do cry from a comic, or you laugh from a comic, or you smile because of a comic, you're not alone. Everyone's done it before, and we're happy that you're doing it too. Now, this isn't the most objective or maybe even instructive video. I was very much going for a very casual conversation of, hey, it's me and you here, let's talk about this. You're struggling to get into it, let me help you. I hope this was helpful and this didn't come off as performative or rude. I'm not here to tell you have to read comics. I'm not here to tell you if you don't like comics, you suck or you're stupid or dumb. Those aren't true. Some people just don't like things that I like, and that's also okay. But I want to help you find your way into not just a community, but also into a personal experience with comics. Because stories are reflections of how a writer's feeling, and thus we project onto it, and it becomes personal in that regard. We feel that way for movies, we feel that way for music, and we feel that way for comics. And I want you to be able to find that comic that connects with you in that way. A comic that makes you think, oh yeah, that's me, or a comic that makes you think, oh, I never thought about that before, or I never thought that way about this specific thing. Comics can change you, and thus it could change lives. And that sounds really corny, but it's really what I believe. So I hope this felt friendly. I'm not going to end this with a list of comics and I'm like, these are the comics you have to read to get into comics. That doesn't exist. Everyone's experience is personal and different. There's some that are easier to get into than others, and there's some that are, just the standard that people like to throw at people, like Watchmen or The Dark Knight Returns. I'm not going to give you those. I'm going to give you my personal favorite comics that I think are pretty easy to get into. I'm going to show them here. I don't know what they are yet because I'm recording this before I write this. So here they are on the screen. Ooh, maybe they're floating around. I don't know. This is a good one. Or maybe that one is. Maybe it's right here. Ooh, they're moving around now. I don't know. Thank you for stopping by and watching this video. I hope you felt connected and you learned something from this. I know I sure did. I know a lot of people like to leave off of these videos saying like and subscribe. I'm not gonna say that. I'm gonna say, please like and subscribe. Please. I need this more than you know. I've been through a lot, and I'm continuing to go through a lot. And your support, it means a lot. Thank you, bye.